Hi there folks, and welcome back to Talking Faith. As you'll notice, things are maybe just a little bit different, a slight change of location. With winter having passed, the weather's getting that little bit better and more reliable, so we thought let's change it up a bit, and when we can we'll try and record a little bit more outside and in the fresh air, give that little bit of a different perspective, but still chatting together and reflecting on different elements of faith. Last week we finished off looking at the Beatitudes. We'd kind of been exploring our way through them for maybe a month or so, I think it was in total. And I really hope that you found that time valuable. But today I'd encourage you, just as ever, to make sure you grab that tea and a coffee, sit down with us as we continue to explore topics of faith. Johnny, what are we going to be thinking about a little bit from now on?
Yeah, over the next period of time, I think it's quite important that we look at, it's called the armour of God. And the reason why I find it quite important that we look at it is I think it actually pairs up quite nicely with the Beatitudes. Some of the subjects kind of merge a little bit together, but I think that's because it's drawing us forward on a journey. And the reason why I really like the book of Ephesians is it's quite simple, and essentially what it does is in the first third, or the first half, it's kind of explaining the glory of the gospel, what Jesus has done for the church in Ephesus, and reminding them of what he's done during his time here on earth. But then, secondly, it's reminding them of, well, this new life that we're called to, the blessed life that we kind of discussed through in the Beatitudes. He brings through very similar notions and tendencies about how Christ changes us through what he did and what he continues to do in our lives. Then that brings him lastly to the armour of God. It's his conclusion to his book or his letter, and I really love it. I've discussed through it several times. It really builds me up every time I look at it, because really what the goal of it is through hard times, through difficulties, through what the book calls spiritual warfare, which essentially is whenever times get tough and difficult, that we're able to stand strong. And the reason why I like it is because it starts with that great notion of standing strong in God. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Let us read together Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 onward. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armour of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For the struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armour of God, so when that day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground after having done everything to stand. I really love that passage, and I've stopped just before we got to the armour. We're going to maybe talk through each one as the time comes. But really this notion comes and starts with, we look to God. He's the one that gives us the strength. He's the one that gives us the power to be able to face the difficult days, because difficult days do come where maybe we want to just, the last thing we want to think about maybe is even God. We kind of put him to the side, and we kind of go a little bit insular. And what this passage is trying to remind us is when those times come, look to him. He's the one that gives us the strength, just as he gave us the strength in the Beatitudes to live this new transformed life.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to be thinking about and reflecting on, and the armour of God does this wonderful thing of unpacking different elements. It takes different, I guess, equipment that you would put on if you were a Roman soldier, say, and you kind of put them on in different ways, and it speaks to the truths of God. So I guess, what is the first of these pieces of equipment that Paul references that we're thinking about?
It's funny how you said the truths, because actually...
Little hint there?
A little hint, yeah. That's where it all starts. And we're maybe not going to go exactly in order as we go through the armour of God, but I find this is such an important place to start, because it's called the belt of truth. Stand firm with the belt of truth buckled around your waist. And the reason why that's so important is, well, belts hold everything together. For Roman soldiers, they'd have a tunic that's under their main armour, and they'd sort of wrap it up, and the belt would keep it all in place so that their armour didn't flap from side to side. I assume going into war with armour that's a bit wobbly is not useful. But it starts with this notion of the belt of truth. And why is that so important? Well, truth is something that's so unifying. It brings things together. And I want to talk a little bit about truth in our relationship with God and truth in our relationship with other people. So in a relationship with God, the very first place to start is knowing who he is, the truth of who he is, a God who is 100% honest, who is always there for us, no matter what the day brings. He is always with us. He is the one that sent Jesus to die on the cross and rise again, and he's the one that brings about this new type of life in us. He is the one who chose us. I find that so important, because when it comes to our relationship to him, sometimes we start to think bad things about ourselves. We start to believe lies which kind of bring us apart from God, because we start to think, well, maybe God doesn't love us because we've done this. Maybe, we're not good enough to be acknowledged by God. And what he says through all the scripture is, no, I see you. I want a relationship with you. And that's the important place to start. This notion that he wants to bring something new in us. And then secondly from that, the truth that we have with him. He calls us to open up about what's in our heart, to be truthful with him, because there might be something we're hiding that's maybe difficult, maybe an area where we're struggling with forgiveness, maybe an area where we've been hurt by someone, and we're if we hold it in, we start to separate ourselves from God a little bit. But as soon as we open up and reveal that to him, he already knows, and he starts working something new through in us. That truthfulness in our relationship with him is so important. And then secondly, our relationship with other people, the importance of finding truth there. I think lies is one of the best ways for people to maybe fall apart, relationships or friendships to kind of break apart a little bit. And some can be small, some can be big, but as soon as somebody's lied once, you kind of think, well, maybe they might do it again. It's difficult. But what we're called to as Christians is this notion of being truthful with one another. And this truth, this belt, as it sort of wraps around you and keeps your armour in place, what it does with us is it unifies us and brings us together so that we can continue to work as a group, as a team, as a family. And it's so important that we bring out that truthfulness in our life to other people around us so that they know we're somebody that they can rely on no matter the difficulties that come in life. And that's what really has been standing out to me in that.
Yeah, truth seems like a really important one for us to start with, particularly in today's society where there are many truths, and truth itself has somehow become subjective, which to my mind kind of undermines the idea of truth at all. But actually for us as Christians, we can take confidence, we can take hope and assurance in God, who is truth, who is true, and we can aspire to reflect that truth in our everyday lives, both in our relationship with him and with one another. So I do hope you found those thoughts valuable. Reflect over them yourself, and we'll join you again next week for some more Talking Faith. Thank you.